Welcome to the final module. Module 7 reviews the key learning points from all the modules and looks to what to do next. What we learn must become alive in what we do tomorrow so that our future changes. Our presenter is Pastor Steve, our Safer Churches lead. A former teacher, Steve has been in senior ministry for 37 years, serving on our national executive, writing and promoting the importance of safer churches nationally and locally for over 20 years. Steve's story of his why began when he realised years later that one of his students was being abused, and he had missed all the evidence. And secondly, when one of his first tasks as a senior pastor was to attend a court sitting where a church attender was convicted and sent to prison for child abuse, and the family and church whānau was fractured. I'd like to warmly welcome Pastor Steve.
Well, greetings and welcome to our 7th and final module. Having arrived at this module, you've satisfied the requirements of the previous 6 sessions. Well done. Let's review our learning objectives in this concluding module. Firstly, we'll summarise some of the findings of the Royal Commission's final report of July 2024. We'll recap on the key learning points of the previous modules. We'll confirm next step for our movement and church and give you a final test to evaluate your learning over all of the modules. Firstly, let's examine briefly the final report of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in State-Based and Faith-Based Care that was released in June 2024. The Commission was tasked with investigating the effects of state and faith-based care of children, young people and the vulnerable between 1950 and 1999, basically 50 years. The inquiry gave those who participated the opportunity to tell their story, and for many, this was the first time they'd ever spoken about it. The Commission heard from almost 3,000 people and produced a 3,000-page report. 59% of those who gave evidence were male and 41% female. The concept of care was defined as foster care, social welfare and church residential homes and schools, correctional facilities, mental health and disabled persons facilities. Here is a summary of some of the report's insights. The Commission estimates that over this 50-year period, 600,000 people were placed in some form of care. 200,000, about 1/3, were abused in some form while in that care. Some were abused to the point where they did not even survive. 47% were abused in state institutions, 11% in faith-based Christian care organisations, and almost 6% were abused in both care environments. The financial cost of this nation is estimated to be between $97.5 billion and $219 billion. Over half of the cost will continue to be carried by the survivors. The key findings are sadly that children most likely to be placed in care were those living in poverty. The family was in crisis, there was domestic violence, parental abuse, neglect, or they were children with special needs. They were deaf, disabled, or mentally distressed. Many suffered abuse from the day they arrived in the place that was entrusted to provide supportive care that was not available anywhere else. Abuse in its various forms was frequently accepted as part of the care institution's culture. Many children suffered varieties of abuse, physical neglect, sexual, racial, and cultural neglect, spiritual and religious abuse and neglect, medical abuse and neglect, torture, solitary confinement, forced labour, and emotional neglect. Our Māori whānau were far more likely to be placed in state care than any other cultural group. At that time, many parents or close adult decision makers believed that out of whānau care, away from Main Street education, would provide a better environment and opportunities for their children. In many cases, sadly, this proved to be false. The unquestioned trust in the authority of leaders and the independence of Christian faith-based institutions also created opportunities for abuse and neglect. Children aged 10 to 14 endured the highest levels of sexual and physical abuse. Most survivors were affected and continue to be affected psychologically and emotionally today. They believe that they have not been able to live their lives to their fullest potential. And the impact of that abuse has impacted their whānau, their grandchildren even. Over 30% of children and young people placed in care went on to serve prison sentences later in life. Again, tamariki and rangatahi Māori were highly overrepresented. Pretty challenging, isn't it? The Royal Commission's findings have resulted in many recommendations and legal requirements that will continue to unfold and redefine the standards and cultures of organisations that in any way care for children and young people. They believe this will form a new foundation for change in our society that reaches down into every aspect of how we care, be it a sports club, a daycare, a children's ward in a hospital, or your Christian youth group. An area within the recommendations that is yet to be fully explored is that of reconciliation and redress for survivors. This could be financial compensation, counselling, and psychological assistance, an official apology to all victims with evidence that the organisation has changed its practices for the better. The Christian Church has historically not cared well, as both the Australian and New Zealand Royal Commissions have highlighted. Our Assemblies of God in New Zealand has not been immune from cases of abuse within our local churches. It's with sadness that most of the motivation to care better has come from Royal Commission investigations and their recommendations. The Christian Church has not maintained the highest standards of care, nor always valued the reputation of Jesus Christ, or acknowledged the precious value of our children and young people. As a movement, we're committed to do better, and this online training is another step. Now let's review the key learnings of each module. Key learnings from Module 1. A biblical mandate for child protection. The Bible emphasises the inherent worth and safety of children. Scriptures highlight the responsibility of the church to provide a nurturing and secure environment, reflecting God's character as a protector of the vulnerable. Our movement's journey and commitment to child safety. Assemblies of God in New Zealand has evolved in its approach to child protection, from initial awareness to the current Safer Churches initiative, which includes the need for our movement's executive and every local church to have policies, procedures and training to ensure consistent safety standards across all our churches. Our current priorities and future goals. We're focused on putting into practice the recommendations of the Royal Commission, strengthening resources for local churches, and making child safety training a basic requirement for all credentialed ministers. Our goal is to establish all Assemblies of God churches as safe places for children and youth, and be recognised as such within our communities. Key learnings from Module 2. Fostering a strong culture of child safety awareness. Church leaders and our churches must see child safety as a shared priority. We must be able to recognise the different forms of abuse. We must acknowledge that abuse can and does occur within churches and make sure that our policies and practices are talked about with all our members. Recognising the widespread impact of child abuse. Child abuse remains a huge issue in our nation. We rank low internationally in the mental, physical, and social well-being of children. The effects of abuse are really damaging, are long-lasting, often spanning generations, and show up in mental health problems, relational difficulties, and social disadvantages. Being aware of these effects must strengthen our determination to protect and support our children and all survivors. Embracing collective responsibility and proactive measures. Child protection is everyone's responsibility, not just your leadership's, but every member of your church. The concepts of care and safety are not a passing fad. They require continuous attention, a willingness and openness to talk, training, proper screening of workers, and clear ways of reporting your concerns. When we respond immediately with compassion to concerns, we grow a safe environment where children are valued, protected, and are able to flourish. Let's look at the key learnings of Module 3. Understanding sexual grooming and its stages. Sexual grooming is a planned and repeated process where abusers build trust and control over children or young people to have illegal sexual activity. It often involves 6 stages: targeting the victim, gaining trust and control, meeting their needs, isolating the child, sexualizing the relationship, and maintaining the power imbalance. Recognizing grooming behaviors and risk factors. Groomers often hide in plain sight, appearing to be trustworthy and caring, sometimes holding leadership roles. They target vulnerable children, such as those with low self-esteem, those with disabilities, or with difficult home environments. Grooming can occur both in person or online using manipulation, secrecy, and overall emotional control. The importance of being vigilant and working together. Awareness and vigilance within our churches is essential. Misunderstandings and trust can cause people to overlook signs of grooming. It's important not to suspect every caring act, but to work together to identify grooming behaviours. Please report any concerns immediately to your leaders or your child protection officer. Supporting victims and maintaining safe environments. Victims often remain silent because of their fear, shame, or they depend on the abuser in some way. Having a culture of safety, openness, and trust within your church helps protect children and encourages victims to come forward. Promptly addressing grooming and abuse is critical to safeguarding children. Let's look at some key learnings now of Module 4, Screening and Vetting. Screening and vetting are essential preventative measures. Proper screening, the internal assessments like interviews and reference checks, and vetting, formal background checks such as police vetting, are critical in minimising risks by ensuring that only safe and suitable individuals work with children and youth in your church. Comprehensive processes protect children and build trust. Verifying a person's identity, reviewing their work and voluntary history, asking about their past behaviour towards children, and requiring a commitment to keep your child protection policies demonstrates your church's commitment to safety and to help build trust with families in the community. Screening and vetting must be completed before appointment. Everyone who has direct or indirect access to children must undergo screening and vetting before beginning their role in church. If they refuse to participate, then this disqualifies them from working with children and youth. Let's look at key learnings from Module 5, the importance of child protection training. Child protection training is essential for prevention and response. Regular training empowers church leaders and members to recognise risks, to respond to any concerns, and to take positive steps to prevent abuse and harm. Everyone in the church has a role because safety is everyone's responsibility. Special training is necessary for different roles so that everyone understands what is expected, how to report concerns, and how to maintain a safe environment. Ongoing training builds a protective culture. Child protection training must keep going. When people begin to refresh and remind and for event-specific sessions. Ongoing training grows confidence, awareness, and a community culture that values and actively protects children. Let's now look at key learnings from Module 6, responding and reporting. Recognizing signs of abuse and harm. It's important to be able to identify the signs of abuse or harm in children and young people, such as unexplained injuries, changes in behaviour, fearful attitudes, or a reluctance to be with a specific person. Recognising these signs is the first step of protecting children. Appropriate response to disclosure. When a child or young person tells of abuse or harm, it's vital to respond calmly, listen attentively, reassure them, ask open-ended questions without judgment, and explain confidentiality and what will happen next. This supports the child's well-being and builds trust. Timely reporting and following procedures. After receiving a disclosure or observing things that concern you, it's critical to record the information accurately and then report it promptly within 24 hours to the right leaders or authorities following the Assembly of God in New Zealand procedures. Make your first care the needs of the child, especially their immediate safety and confidentiality. Next steps for you at the local church level. In the light of the Royal Commission's recommendations, the Safer Churches team have in late 2025 reviewed and revised our Safer Churches National Policy and Procedures document. When it is accepted by the Executive, it will become the umbrella document for our national movement. It will then be each local church's responsibility to update their own local church child safety policy and procedure documents. Following the Royal Commission's review and the movement's updated material, you as a credentialed minister will now need to review and update your Safer Churches policy and procedure documents. Accept these documents within your local church government with your elders and your boards. Appoint and retrain your CPO and all people who have contact with children and young people to these new guidelines to continually review and refine your documents and processes as best practice, especially in the light of new information or requirements. Understand that ongoing change will continue as we learn and equip ourselves and our churches to be safe places for all. The National Safer Churches Department and team can assist you with each one of these details. As we conclude this final module, it's important that you reconfirm your personal why. The foundation for why child safety matters must be anchored in God's priceless value for children and young people. It will never be enough to simply hold head knowledge about the problems of abuse, a file for your policies and procedures, and a determination to avoid damage to you or your church's reputation from allegations of abuse. Our priority is so much greater than these. Our goal has been firstly that you are more aware, more informed, and more committed to the value and safety of children and young people. Secondly, that you're determined to transform your church, its culture, your meeting places, and your activities in every way possible to be safe and caring places. Thirdly and finally, we all acknowledge that within our churches there will be people who have been or are even now being abused by others. People they may like, respect, and least expect to abuse them, but need most of all to receive our compassion, our guidance, and our loving support. God bless each one of you as you walk this journey with us to make our churches, our activities, and our workers safe for the benefit of all. Thank you.
To conclude, firstly, thank you to all those who have created this training. Thank you too for your positive participation in renewing your ministry credential. We trust this training has inspired you to build a safer church for everyone. We know we can't change the world alone, but we can change the culture of care within the areas that we lead, and by that protect and transform our communities. It often boils down to doing one small thing, just one. Together as a movement, let's focus on our churches being safe places where everyone flourishes. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me." As we bring these children into Jesus' presence, let us make sure we are giving them a safe environment and a church culture where they are protected. Finally, remember, Safer Churches does not end today as you complete this course. We still have much to do together to build a strong culture that values everyone as precious creations like Jesus Christ does. The Safer Churches area within the AG New Zealand website contains resources that will help you further. Both Pastor Steve and Pastor Linda are available to assist you by email with these resources. Finally, if you have concerns regarding abuse, you need to contact your CPO or Child Protection Officer, your senior leader or senior pastor, the Safer Churches lead, or the National Secretary for the Assemblies of God movement. Thank you, and God bless you all.